Okay, I'm Ben, I'm 18, I'm trans and queer, and I do a lot of stuff in terms of like LGBT things in Liverpool, so I'm trustee for the Michael Causer Foundation. I'm involved in everything really. The Michael Causer Foundation was set up after the death of Michael Causer. So Michael was from Whiston, and he was killed because he was gay. So his parents set up the foundation to try and help other like LGBT young people in Merseyside and to try and make sure they feel safe and they don't have to go through what Michael went through. So they kind of have, what we kind of do is different campaigns around Merseyside. We represent a Pride every year because Pride was set up as a result of Michael's death, as like a response. And we do loads of different things around the city to try and raise awareness of LGBT issues. Peer groups were definitely enforcing ideas of gender and gender roles. So in primary school I never found that there was a clear gender divide because everyone just did the same thing. Everyone was in the same PE class. Everyone did the same activities regardless. We all wore the same PE kit and it was fine. But getting to high school, because there's more of a need to fit into high school, people begin to live up to these gender roles. So the girls would kind of, draw on massive scouse brows and have lots of makeup and, wear the skirts a certain length and just do these things which are like, typically feminine. And then the lads would, start acting hard, I guess you'd say, and they'd start kind of being a bit more macho, getting into things like football, rugby, fighting, any sort of sport. And it was there that I was like, well, actually, I don't like makeup, I don't like skirts, none of that works, but also like, I don't really like football and I don't really like things that are typically masculine. So it was kind of there that there was this massive divide that was enforced by peer groups, and I was like really emo in high school as well, so I wore like black lipstick because it was a bit androgynous, I think, is why I did it. And there was a few people that I knew, didn't matter if they were male or female, they dressed the same as me. And I think that's why I was bullied, because I didn't fit into these two categories that were set out for me in high school. I went down a different route. And in high school I found that once I started campaigning for that, once I started campaigning for people to go, look, there is this alternative lifestyle, if you will, there's an alternative way of being. You don't have to fit into these big roles, you don't have to fit into, like in makeup or like in football, you can go and be something else. That people actually began becoming more aware and began kind of going, oh yeah, so, these people aren't freaks, these people aren't outcasts of society, they actually just want to fit in like everyone else, they're just kind of finding their own path. I grew up just outside of Worcester, and so it's quite close to where Michael lived. And as a place, it's hard, it's still hard to gauge the reaction of the people who live there. It's still hard to feel how they understand LGBT issues and how they think of LGBT people, because where I live is kind of a small village, with the older generation kind of taking over the village in a way, so there's not that many young people. So growing up, it was kind of like I wasn't surrounded by issues that really affected young people, and I never knew, I was bullied a lot, and I never really understood why I was different, never really understood what that meant for me, until I got to high school, and then differences started coming out more. So my high school was very, very much, girls have to be like this and boys have to be like this, and I found myself stuck in the middle. So it wasn't until I was about 14 that I began to realise, I'm trans, I'm queer, all these different things kind of belong, and this is where I feel I fit in society. And from there, it's kind of been speaking to people around where I live, it's kind of thinking, well, if I'd have come out younger, this would have been the reaction I had. So growing up, it was kind of mixed really about how people would react to you, just because of the different places that people would come from and the different kind of backgrounds they had. And I think that's where a lot of the support came from, was kind of educating people and saying to them, look, you don't have to fit anywhere. And I began getting involved in the Sophie Lancaster Foundation as well. So she was a girl who was killed because she looked kind of gothic and a bit emo. And through that I was able to find a support network through Sophie's family, and bringing that into my school extended the support network not only from people who I knew who were kind of within that emo gothic community, but people outside of there who were beginning to kind of understand what was going on and how things around us affect how we were viewed as a group.
So how did you feel the ability to speak up and educate other people in that way?
It started in a really strange way. So we always had an Anthony Walker Day at school, and Anthony Walker was another young male who was killed because he was black, so it was a racially fuelled attack. And his mum set up the Anthony Walker Foundation, and we'd always had an Anthony Walker Day to recognise diversity and to recognise equality in my high school, which was always a positive and was always like amazing to have, and I'm so grateful that I had that in my high school. But I went to a teacher and said, you know, this is a day about diversity and I'd like to show another side of diversity. You know, there's not just this kind of like, you know, the racial and cultural side of it, there's also things to do with being emo and goth and how that fits into the kind of like equality and diversity ethos of the school. And I got told by a teacher that he didn't want something like that, he wanted something more mainstream. So to hear that a teacher wanted something more mainstream on a day where we're supposed to celebrate difference, I went to my student council, which I was part of at the time, and said, I'm not having any of this. So I started a petition in school to get Sophie Lancaster her own day. So not only could we recognise Anthony Walker and the great work that they're doing as a foundation and the kind of equality that they're campaigning for, we could also recognise the equality that Sophie Lancaster's foundation is campaigning for. So a quarter of the school kind of signed that, and I took it to the head teacher and said, your staff member has said this to me, look at what it's done, look at how many people support us. And that's kind of where it started, where I felt like if I actually spoke up, if I actually said something and said that this is not okay, that something can get done about it. So the Sophie Lancaster Foundation's kind of like day in our school is now recognised and is now going on continuously throughout each academic year. And that teacher left, and I later saw him at the Anthony Walker Gala dinner in 2015, where I actually got to go up and accept an award on behalf of the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, which I would later give to them. And as I was saying in the speech, I spoke about this teacher who, you know, said that he wanted something more mainstream on a day of diversity, and to see him sat there and to think he's looking at me and thinking, look at what I've kind of done in a way, look at, you know, that ignorance has kind of fueled all this great work. It's the courage to speak up doesn't come from it didn't come from what he did to me, it came from what I felt had to be done. That he'd said something that almost kind of in a way, you know, takes down what the Anthony Walker Foundation stood for and kind of like destroys the whole kind of point of the day, that we're supposed to be selling equality, we're supposed to be celebrating equality and diversity, so why would you get something more mainstream in when we're supposed to be celebrating something different? And to me that just didn't make sense, and I don't know whether it was something kind of in me kind of went, well, you know, you're kind of outcasted in this school. If someone wants something more mainstream, they clearly don't want you here. And it was kind of that, well, I need to find that belonging, and I need to tell them that people who are different belong in this school, people who are different belong in this community. I don't know, I think that's where it came from.